Good. Wow.
How'd you get here?
Hello everyone, I hope all of you are doing well. We've started a bit early. Figured we'd just go ahead and jump in. I'm sitting here with my olives and relaxing. Just gotta keep it going. I'm a sucker for a good olive. And I kind of missed my lunch. So I'm gonna do that, power bar, all those fun things as we get through this. We'll see what we can do. But core idea. It's actually a pretty simple one. This is PhilosophyTube. Someone who actually got to claim that name for their channel. And Abigail has done a lot of videos in her time, pre and post transition. And very rarely have they been good when they're on philosophy. Best videos Abigail's done are actually on real things in the world. When she seems to actually care about something, when it impacts her much more directly, she actually will go incredibly in depth. Her video on the nature of what it was like to get healthcare, trans healthcare explicitly in the UK, and all of that I thought was very good. It's a very interesting subject. It's one that not a lot of people have covered to the depth. There's still issues I have with how she phrases things, but you know, it's better videos. Philosophy is not PhilosophyTube's strong suit. Carefree wandering? Was it wandering? Sunday and I at one point, President Sunday, friend of the channel, and I at one point had spent a good deal of time talking through her video on Kant, because Wandering did a video on that. And I'll just say the short version is that was fucking terrible. It was terrible. But I was wrong when I said that it probably couldn't get much worse. I was wrong. We're going to take this bit by bit. We're not going to watch the second half of the video. The second video, titled Was Nietzsche Mega? So you can imagine how good this video is. You can imagine how good video is. So we will just get underway. Please, if you like what I do, like what we do support the channel, give a membership, give a super chat, join up, or join the Discord, which is the best thing you can do. discord.gg/DGQC. I'm going to be stopping a lot, so just be ready for that. This is a fucking hell of a thing.
I have the answer right here. Friedrich Nietzsche was a 19th century German philosopher. His work is often sold as self-help, but he's extremely controversial. So today, we are going to answer the most important question of all. Is this guy woke?
So, it's a fun framing device. This is what you do with popular philosophy. Pop philosophy as a thing, which is 100% what this video is. A trash version of it, too. Thank you, Rick Sai, for the 5 gifted memberships. Well, I'm actually going to answer someone. Cruz is in there. Would you say there's anything to be learned from her philosophy vids? Also a place of basic books to rec for a beginner who wants to learn philosophy about Marx, etc. First off, join our Discord, discord.gg/DGQC. We're built to help people, guide people through this. But specifically for anyone, any philosopher, and anyone who's wanting to get into it, the easiest thing to do is to begin. The hardest thing to do is to begin, because most people think there's a right way to read this. There is not. Ever, ever, ever. There's no right way to go about learning philosophy. That's not a thing. There are ways that are advantageous. For example, going to a college and spending 6 to 7 years of your life paying people to do nothing but teach you about stuff, that helps more than sitting at home reading a book. It's advantageous. It's not the only way. Find someone who has an idea that you resonate with. Find something of theirs that you can start parsing through, and then just start searching for people who wrote about that. That's it. This is how you make your way through philosophy. Most people make their way into it through something like this. I used to have a thought about Mark Fisher, for example, who I used to sort of give a pass because Mark Fisher ultimately did bring a lot of people towards Deleuze, to Nietzsche, Bataille, others. I used to be okay with pop philosophy because I was like, whatever gets people to read it. I no longer believe that. Now that I'm here, it stems from STEM education and the nature of STEM education. The mentality that, hey, whatever gets a kid to do math is okay. So for me, my math was a thing I learned because I was into programming. I had a Commodore 20 and then Commodore 64, and I just really dug into it. And you can't do much without maths, as they say across the pond. You just can't. So I began finding other things. And there isn't really a bad way to start learning to program as long as you're doing it. Because learning BASIC, learning C++, learning C++, learning C#, learning Java, learning anything, these things, there's no shitty way to do it. Programming a video game is not actually making you a better programmer than programming anything else. It really isn't. And I think that's true for a lot of STEM. Philosophy is different. Philosophy is very different. If you start with someone like this, who's going to explain awful ways about Nietzsche and how to understand Nietzsche, and you're going to go from this to reading Nietzsche, you have had your understanding of Nietzsche conditioned. And that is bad. It is flatly bad to start that way. You should be reading the writers and their words, not in the way that the author intended. It's none of that bullshit, but without having any of these really terrible understandings. When people go to Nietzsche and they go, oh, he's a Nazi, or they go to Nietzsche and they go, he's about self-help. If you start there, that conditions how you understand everything. That is dangerous because it means that you will have a lot of work to unlearn things that you don't even know that you're putting onto these people. It is a really, really bad place. Tree bonus. If you're going to start from Plato, go read some Plato. Phaedrus is great, I think, as a great way. But if it doesn't grab you, it doesn't grab you. Don't go, well, I don't like this, I don't understand it. Don't read the beginning of Anti-Oedipus and go, I don't get it, I'm too stupid. Because you're not. You're reading difficult shit. Philosophy is, by nature, difficult shit. You're reading top tier. There's no junior philosophy. There's no, hey, intro to philosophy that's kind of like an intro to programming. That's not how philosophy works. It's complicated and it's a unique way of engaging things. When it comes to pop philosophy, it isn't great. And pop philosophy, to me, is when we use analogy. Analogy of popular things, analogies and references that make people go, hoo-hoo. Those books at Barnes & Noble, I mention it whenever I can, where it's Seinfeld in philosophy, Dune in philosophy. You see those books at Barnes & Noble, they're always on the end racks or they're in the philosophy section. This is pop philosophy. It's where you're mixing things and terms. Nietzsche was not woke. Nietzsche was not unwoke. Woke, if you're not going to define it up front, which by the way, she never does, starting from a position of saying, hey, is this philosopher this thing that I'm not going to define that's also kind of confusing, is so infuriating to start with, but it's a false premise to begin with. And it's pop bullshit because you're making reference and analogy to things that are not part of this. If you want to say was he sympathetic to the Nazis? Also silly. He wasn't around. This is not his thing. Was Nietzsche, would Nietzsche have loved Pepsi? Would he have loved Dune? Would he have loved Star Wars? These are not, they're anachronistic, weird ways of looking at it. And it's garbage to start from. If you want to engage philosophy, don't do it through people like this. Don't do it through people like me. There are people who've dedicated their lives to trying to explain thinkers. Read a book, find someone to help you, and find the things that grab you. Whatever it is, go down that road. You will find a multitude of paths and the everything will just spider web out from there. Do not do it like this. Was Nietzsche woke? No. But I need you to define woke first. So you haven't noticed, we're 15 seconds in. It took me 8 minutes to get through that. So let's go. Nietzsche would not love Pepsi. Nietzsche would be someone who would, I was going to make a bad joke. It's just a terrible thing, isn't it? Just as a thing? Just a, ugh.
I have the answer right here in this envelope. I'm going to open it at the end and reveal it. But for now, let's see if we can figure it out together. In super general terms, Nietzsche thought that society has gone wrong. It's all gone bad, we've gone off the rails, and we need to fix it. So
this is I'd be very hesitant to say that this is accurate. Nietzsche critiqued society. Absolutely. To say that Nietzsche thought society had gone off the rails is weird, given that all of his critiques yield about 2,000 to 3,000 years of human history. So, yeah, we'd gone off the rails since civilization, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if he would go like, hey, you know what sucks is society today. Hey, we went off the rails about 20 years ago. You know, it used to be about booze and broads. Like, that's just such a weird way of phrasing Nietzsche. I love it. Yeah, since agriculture can hear us, that's right. It's Nietzsche believed society was deforming humanity, and it was doing it in some particular ways. But again, Nietzsche was complicated. Anytime someone says, I'm going to oversimplify, realize they're doing that. And if they say something really dumb that's like really, really broad, that could apply to anyone. For example, is there anyone who thinks society is going great? Like, there's nobody alive. Like, it's a statement of meaninglessness. Like, there's zero value in that fucking concept. I'm gonna start a cult that's everything's fine. Because there's no one.
His project was to try and diagnose how that happened and recommend some solutions. He was a culture warrior. He wrote
This is why I use the term pop philosophy.
a lot of stuff about popular art and music and what they say about society.
I am going to revisit real quick the nature of this video and how it's put together is really problematic. President Sunday did a thing earlier and sort of talked through the sources that are used. Why Nietzsche Still is a collection of essays on why Nietzsche is still considered important, or why is he, should he be. It is the primary source of all of these things. This idea that Schrift gives in his introduction of it, this is not accurate way to put it. It's to say it again.
Solutions. He was a culture warrior. He wrote a lot of stuff about popular art and music and what they say about society.
Sort of true. To say he was a culture warrior is really, really tough. He wrote about culture, but it wasn't like Zizek writes more about culture, and I would be hesitant to call him a culture warrior.
So he was kind of on some Jordan Peterson.
No, he wasn't. Let's talk about some differences between Nietzsche and him. For example, Jordan Peterson is explicitly born out of hating trans people and made famous by an industrial complex around the Republican and conservative mindset, which rewards people who overemphasize this. A lot of college professors have done this. The Weinsteins are famous, and I'm going to call them that because Harvey and Brett and all of them, I'm assuming, are all related. I'm just going to say they are because it's funny. But they're all like just liars. They're just liars and grifters. Nietzsche doesn't do what he does for a grift at all. Nietzsche spends his life until he cracks ultimately, writing about these things and really living a life of solitary sort of sadness. Yeah.
And shit, which is immediately giving not woke. He lived in Germany and he died in 1900. And do you know who was a big fan of Friedrich Nietzsche? That's right. Hitler.
It's sort of actually not true. This is one of those things that's really tough when we talk about like big fans or what it means to have these things involved in various movements. It's similar, and you see a lot of identity politics assholes like Abigail Thorne, who is an identity politics asshole, saying things like this, or, oh, the IDF, they really read 1,000 Plateaus, and so Deleuze-Guattari, and it's like, look, read the actual works. If your entire analysis, and most of this analysis, by the way, is guilt by association or relationships that are not really even there, it's really painful. Id pull assholes. Identity politics is a reactionary phenomenon. If you didn't know, we can watch a wonderful video that's very short and very particular. But identity politics is about the necessity of having capital recognize your identity as unique and special in you, and your egoism as something that is valuable. Very much that, when your identity is fourth and first and all that matters. That setup, I'd pull assholes. I have no desire for people like that.
Hitler and Mussolini. That's not good. I mean, I think we can all agree that on the woke, not woke scale, Hitler, not woke. But
Hitler also like Charlie Chaplin.
But after the war, a German philosopher called Martin Heidegger said that the Nazis had misinterpreted Nietzsche and that he was actually woke all along.
I'm pretty sure Heidegger didn't say that.
And then in the 1950s, he had a big influence on Michel Foucault.
He had influence on a fucking lot of people. So when we talk about, and we see people talking about woke or someone being Nazis, because this is why this is going to matter, and I'm about to start on a rant, so just be ready with that. Heidegger, I'm not a big fan of a lot of Heidegger's work. I think I'm being in times good. I think Heidegger wrote really interesting shit. Was Heidegger a Nazi? No. He was a member of the Nazi Party, Brooks. So literally he's a Nazi, but what is the matter of this? How do we describe this? How do these things impact the words that he wrote and the ideas we can get from them? Is it just throw out everything because of the time and place? Because I got to tell you, we've got 3,000 years of thought and ideas that I'm not sure everyone is ready for the weird purity level that you'd have to take in order to get to that point. When Heidegger came into like the public eye, it happened because the guy before him, who was heading up the college, refused to put up anti-Jew posters. And so he got fired, and I think worse. Heidegger in the position allowed the Nazis to do their thing, and he kind of believed that he just was going to go about doing what he was going to do. So Heidegger, definitely a Nazi, but was he a Nazi in the broad sense? Was he everything? Was he this totality? Was he an identitarian in that sense? Is this how we're going to boil people down in every single way to a single aspect, an element or a thing? Because the rest of this video, and it's, I do look like a mess. I am a mess. What do you fucking, that's the way it works. I have fucking 2 kids and I have 2 jobs. This is life. The setup that's happening here is pretending that we're setting up this big tone overall, that Nietzsche can be put into this category or that based on associations that may not have any setup at all, based on who can say this and who could say any other things. All of this is just influence this person, but this person, this is like identity politics being played out in front of us, and not in an ironic way. That's a little spoiler. This isn't like, none of this really matters. No, all of this matters.
And postmodernism. In the
Only stupid people say postmodernism like this.
1990s, some right-wing writers like Dinesh D'Souza said that Friedrich Nietzsche was secretly turning college students woke via Foucault and postmodernism. At the same time, some other right-wing writers like Naomi Wolf said that Nietzsche wasn't woke, but they thought it was a good thing. Nietzsche wrote a lot about resentment.
Naomi Wolf is a very complex person. Saying she's right-wing is weird. Like she's right-wing conspiracies. I just don't think that's the right way. I'm not a fan of Naomi Wolf at all. She's a hack when it comes to like research. Famously, there's this thing, she wrote this big story about how gay people used to be put to death, but that's because she misunderstood that there was a term used in, I want to say ancient, like the old UK, like 100 years ago, that was like death of sentence. She assumed meant death sentence instead of just the sentence dying and them being expunged.
And celebrated by the liberal left worldwide. She's got a new book.
She's a liberal centrist rightist. That's what she is. She's a Bill Clinton type. But again,
Book out. It's called Outrage.
oh no, this guy is awful. Like, again, we're watching this not to laud this guy. This guy sucks in every way. He sucks more than her, and she sucks.
Sex, censorship, and the criminalization of love. And her thesis relies, at least in part, apparently, on the fact that there were people executed in the UK for what were then crimes.
Found like several dozen executions, but that was again only looking at the Old Bailey records and the crime tables.
Several
originally.
dozen executions.
Correct. And this corrects a misapprehension that is in every website, that the last man was executed for sodomy in Britain in 1835.
I don't think you're right about this. One of the cases that you look at that's salient in your report is that of Thomas Silver. It says teenagers were now convicted more often. Indeed, that year, which is 1859, 14-year-old Thomas Silver was actually executed for committing sodomy. The boy was indicted for an unnatural offence. Guilty, death recorded. This is the first time the phrase unnatural offence entered the Old Bailey records. Thomas Silver wasn't executed. Death recorded. I was really surprised by this, and I looked it up. Death recorded is what's in, I think, most of these cases that you've identified as executions. It doesn't mean that he was executed. It was a category that was created in 1823 that allowed judges to abstain from pronouncing a sentence of death on any capital convict whom they considered to be a fit subject for pardon. I don't think any of the executions you've identified here actually happened.
Well, that's a really important thing to investigate. What is your understanding of what death recorded means?
Death recorded.
That's
Investigate.
It actually happened.
Well, that's a really important thing to investigate.
And how people can stew.
This is going to make me have a stroke. I did a video on this, and I'm mostly just going to refer you to somewhere else on the channel. I did a video on resentment because people don't get this right, and this is not right. Actually, nothing here is right, but... Whew.
They thought it was a good thing. Nietzsche wrote a lot about resentment and how people can stew on resentment.
No. Resentment is not as he talked about it. People don't stew on resenting someone. That's not really what he's talking about. He's talking about the unconscious. He's talking about the pre-conscious, the pre-subject. He's not talking about how people sit and stew over, oh, that guy's such an ass. Why does he get all the money? Like, that's an example of resentment. That's not resentment as he's talking about it. This is not what Nietzsche talked about.
And writers like Woolf thought that feminism had become too whiny, too focused on victimhood and virtue signaling.
I would agree with this.
They thought that women should be tough.
That's not what Naomi... To be very fair to someone who I don't like being... that's not really... Like, we gotta be butch. That's not what she's fucking saying. That's not what Naomi was saying. She was talking about the fact that... if you're going to spend your time, and she kind of utilized Nietzsche for this. You know what? I'm going to say it was a stretch.
Again, and they used Nietzsche in their argument.
Random threepo. British just means people I don't like. You know what? And it is a slur. British is a slur. Thank you for adding the apostrophe. Eventually, what would it take for British not to be a thing that we can make fun of? Because I think... Because it's, I mean, they've killed like 100 million plus people, like over the history of Britain. Then get rid of the Queen and King. I'll stop.
Arguments. Meanwhile, in France, the next generation of
I get the reference.
French philosophers said that Nietzsche was not woke.
I want to know who this is. I want to know who this is. I want to know what French philosophers were saying that Nietzsche is not woke. The next generation. So it has to be, in theory, post-Foucault. So not Deleuze, but I am at a loss.
And they thought it was very bad, but the next generation of British philosophers said that he was secretly woke all along.
I do. I don't think Baidu would say that Nietzsche was or wasn't. One, he certainly wasn't using woke. Obviously, we're talking analogy here, which I love, as you know. So saying that Nietzsche was secretly woke, do we mean good or progressive? Like, oh, fuck, I hate, anyone who uses woke sucks, by the way. Just anyone who uses that. It was a great term when it was a great term, and it was a great term for waking up. It was the original red pill, for fuck's sake. It's the original red pill. So it used to be a great term. It's ruined now. What the fuck? Baidu did not dislike Nietzsche, but he wouldn't.
And then, just to put the icing on the cake, in 2017, Martin Heidegger's private notebooks were translated, and we discovered that Heidegger was a Nazi.
I don't think we needed to wait till 2017 to find out that he was a Nazi. What the fuck? Okay, I need to look the timeline up on this, because when people say shit like this, it makes me really just like, wait, I thought we knew he was a Nazi. Heidegger, Nazi. Did we have to wait till that? I don't think we had to wait till that. I'm just trying to I'm just going to go right to Wikipedia. I just want to get the dates right, because I am certain that my whole life I've known that like Heidegger was and I don't mean a Nazi in the like fuck off Nazi punks shit, but more like, hello, I'm Martin Heidegger. Here is my Nazi card kind of Nazi. Like I have a card in my wallet kind of thing. I think he was a card carrying Nazi. And also said bad shit. Oh God. We didn't have to wait. We knew in 1933 when he made a speech using the words, we have the new Reich and the university that is to receive its tasks from the Reich's will to existence. There is revolution in Germany, and we must ask ourselves, is there revolution at the university as well? No. Heidegger denounced and demoted 3 colleagues for being insufficiently Nazi. Like again, that's like real. We didn't have to wait. That's stupid. She was being sarcastic there. She's like, we had to, no.
The next generation of British philosophers said that he was secretly woke all along. And then, just to put the icing on the cake, in 2017, Martin Heidegger's private notebooks were translated, and we discovered that Heidegger was a Nazi who tried to hide after the war.
No, we didn't discover that then. I'd give the benefit of the doubt if it was one thing. It's everything. This is written by someone who, and the rest of this is written by someone who's not read Nietzsche, meaningfully. No, I thought I knew what you were talking about, low hanging, and then I went back. It was a mishearing. That's fucking. Yeah, after the war, he downplayed his connection to the Nazis. Like, sure, because, we killed all of them. Not a lot of people still wore their swastika armband after the war. And all of those people were hiding that they were Nazis, or is it just like time moves on and let's keep going? I'm not a big Heidegger fan. We actually had a reading on our server. It's one of my favorite things we've had done early on, because we had a handful of people who were like scholars and doctors and crazy people who know fucking philosophy like I will never. And they did a Heidegger reading through Deleuze. And it was one of my favorite things to listen to because Heidegger himself, his writings are not for me. But when you take them and you do that lens, it's really fun to sort of see where he goes and where you can go with it. There's cool things you can do with all kinds of thought. You can always do that. But Heidegger was actually just a Nazi. Friction, I mean, I think she's making this for people who don't care to read about philosophy or know anything about it, because there's nothing to learn here. There's nothing to learn here.
So, his original reevaluation of Nietzsche might have been an attempt to cover his own ass and say that he was woke, even though he was actually a big fan of Hitler. So
well, that's going a little far. Saying he was a big fan of Hitler, I'm not sure I'd say that about Heidegger. That's just really... Actually, I would say that's probably not true of Heidegger. That is counter to his writings and what he talked and how he talked about things. Like Nazis suck, but man, it's a fantasy a lot of people have. They look back and they see someone like Heidegger becomes a university leader, and it's during this time and he's like, oh, the man before me, he was, fucking drug off into the street and shot for not putting up anti-Jewish posters. I'm sure if I were in Heidegger's shoes, I would absolutely do exactly the thing that I imagine, and I would be so brave. I'd be so brave. And it's like, yeah, you probably wouldn't. Probably wouldn't. You wouldn't.
how come there's been all this debate? Well, because Nietzsche...
No, chapter like he was a nationalist, 100%. But I think he was a nationalist more than he was a Hitlerite. That's the part that I think, because I've read a bunch on Heidegger, and he would say something along the lines of, I want Germany to survive, fuck Hitler. Like, he would choose one over the other without a question. He's not like a fan of Hitler. It's weird.
Is tricky. Normally, when we learn about a philosopher, their work is framed as an argument, like Socrates says X and therefore Y. But it's kind of hard to do that with Nietzsche.
No, it's not. Nietzsche has a series of arguments that you can do that with, I think, quite well. Klosowski has a book called The Vicious Circle, which is particularly around his concept of the eternal return. That's one example. I could do this with many, 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 many things in Nietzsche. But just because he has many arguments, and they're actually pretty well soundly put out, it's not hard to do this with, I would say. Nietzsche is not hard to do this with. Anyone who's watching, pick up a book. The Gay Sciences, phenomenal book. Ecce Homo, phenomenal book. Genealogy of Morals. Don't read Beyond Good and Evil. It's a whole other thing. You can find in them phenomenal writing that is not really that difficult to parse out what he's trying to say or what his arguments are. Rimondu, in My Country, Heidegger's really influential. Thomas, Marxists and liberals read them. Yeah, I mean, Heidegger has good shit. Again, I'm kind of skipping past it because I'm not a huge fan of Heidegger, but that doesn't mean I don't think Heidegger's a bad philosopher. I think actually he's influential, he's important. It's not for me. But again, to just go, oh, he's a fan of Hitler, it's just a very weird way of doing it. Sorry, I'm waxing my mustache as I'm talking. Nervous tick.
Because his stuff is so weird. Some of it is written as straightforward essays.
That's
some
not
of it
true.
is like collections of sayings. Some of it is like its own genre of weird artsy stuff. This book, The Will to Power, has Friedrich Nietzsche's name on it, but it was actually assembled posthumously from all of his various scribblings.
From all of his various scribblings is a very, very poorly considered way to phrase this. Writers, especially philosophers who have published works. I have a Human All Too Human, Spanish edition, first edition that Nietzsche oversaw in Spanish. I have a copy of it. It's really cool. when a writer finds these and they put them together, they write them. They are to a point. They have essays in a particular order. They are the thing the person wants their name put to. Most of these people do not want, after they die, to have a bunch of their shit put together in some random order by someone else. This was not all of his other scribblings. This is the stuff he decided not to publish while he was alive. This is the stuff he decided not to publish while he was alive. That's the big fucking deal. So imagine you go through your whole life and you are a philosopher and you write a whole bunch of shit. You're going to write stuff and then you're going to read it the next day and go, oh fuck, that came out wrong. And you're not going to throw it out because you want to kind of maybe come back to it. And then the next day you have a heart attack. And then your Nazi sister decides to publish it. That's this. This is not from various scribblings. This is stuff Nietzsche didn't want to publish while he was alive. It's important to know that. It's very frustrating. His various scribblings? Fuck.
It's sometimes pretty unclear what Nietzsche's actually trying to say.
It really isn't. He is beyond clear. His writing is so fucking good when it's translated correctly. It's unbelievable. He's so good. People who are asking something to start with Nietzsche, just pick something up. Don't listen to me. I will tell you my favorites. I won't actually. Nietzsche's good. It's solid, good reading. And it's not that hard. He's got like a paragraph or two. Most of it's its own brought in point. Thus Spoke Zarathustra is difficult, but it's difficult because it's more like prose literature philosophy. It's a weird thing, but it's also not weird and like, oh, I don't know what this is saying and I can't make my way through it. No, it's weird in the like, holy shit, a philosopher wrote this? It's very good. It's very good and kind of brutal. Yeah, just don't start with Zarathustra. I like it a lot. I think Thus Spoke Zarathustra is powerful, but it's important as a thing.